Britain's largest car manufacturer, Jaguar Land Rover, is warning the government that it needs greater certainty over Brexit if it's going to safeguard the 40,000 jobs they have in the UK. Our reporter Phil Edwards is here, and they follow the likes of BMW, Audi, Nissan as well.
Similar warnings, but this is, as you say, Britain's biggest manufacturer. It's not just the 40,000 jobs, Tom, directly involved with the various plants, but 260,000 as well in the supply chain. They're also big investors as well. Now, they've invested some £50 billion over the past 5 years or so, and they have plans to invest a further £80 billion over the next 5 years. But the chief executive, Ralph Speth, has said while its heart and soul are in the UK, without frictionless trade, its planned investment could be in jeopardy. He also reckons that a bad Brexit deal could cost the company £1.2 billion in profits every year. It's probably worth saying at this point, though, that they recently announced plans to switch production of the Discovery model to Slovakia, and that could result in a number of job losses. Now, the Business Secretary, Greg Clark, has tweeted the following. He has said, JLR is a great British success story. We are determined to make sure that it can continue to prosper and to invest in Britain. But just to put things into perspective, this is a company that exported 80% of the cars it made last year to 130 different countries around the world. It's a real flag waver, of course, JLR, and it contributed £2 billion in tax to the Treasury coffers. More pressure then on the Prime Minister, who, as we know, sits down with her cabinet ministers to try to thrash out a final strategy for exiting the EU. That's on Friday, and that is now seen as a crucial meeting.
Yeah, big meeting. Jaguar Land Rover, front page of the FT today.
The latest company to send a shot across the bows of the government on the subject of Brexit is Jaguar Land Rover. Its chief executive, Ralph Speth, has told the Financial Times that the company is committed to Britain, but he would move abroad if it was the only option to save the company. And if I am forced to go out, then we will close plants here in the UK. That is what he says. Simon Jack is our business editor and is on the line. And he's not normally a hugely political guy, is he?
No, he has not wanted to get into this fray at all. He's a pretty reasonable, low-key sort of guy, an academic, and an engineer. So, but he's, he realises we've got a massive summit on Friday tomorrow, and he is the latest, as you say, after the likes of Airbus, BMW and Nissan to say, look, if we get no deal, we've got a real problem about investing in the future. Now, the government will say no deal is not what anybody wants. It's not what we want. It's not what Brussels wants. And so that is a threat that doesn't really exist. But all of them will say that even if we do get a deal, any kind of Brexit which threatens the movement of components, and some of these components can cross between the UK and the EU several times in the life cycle of a product, that will cause hold-ups. It means we have to build warehouses to store this stuff. Honda was looking, for example, saying we need 9 days' worth of parts in case of delays at the ports. If we have to build a building, that will be the biggest building on Earth. So what they're trying to say is make this as frictionless as possible. I think this does give a bit of grist, a power to the elbow of the Prime Minister, who's going to try and sell a deal to her wider cabinet tomorrow night, which looks like a very soft version of Brexit, which means that we would collect tariffs on behalf of the EU, obviating the need for customs checks at the border, and also we would stay very closely aligned on regulatory matters. So
that last point is a really important one, isn't it? Because it may well be something too far for the Brexiteers to go, but from the point of view of the car industry, other industries as well who've been speaking out, that is really important.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to one of these factories, and I've been to quite a few of them over the last couple of years, you see hundreds of lorries arriving every day, unloading parts, which arrive not just in time, but just in sequence. The yellow wing mirror arrives at the same time as the yellow car chassis does. And if you have those delays, then all of that is thrown into, is majorly disrupted. And that's why they're saying that you've got to have the regulatory piece of this as well. Now, that, of course, is very difficult for some of the hard Brexiteers to swallow, because if you've got regulatory alignment, you've got customs partnership, what was the point of Brexit, someone would say. We wanted to be able to do our own thing, go off and do our own thing. That is the bitter pill they would have to swallow. But, so there's an almighty row probably tomorrow night, but this Jaguar Land Rover intervention will help those pushing for a softer Brexit.
Simon Jack, thank you. Let us turn to Owen Paterson, who is, of course, Conservative MP, former Minister, keen Brexiteer, is on the line. Good morning to you.
Hello, Justin, good morning.
Do you think Jaguar Land Rover are just making this up?
No, not at all. But I think what is good is that they are asking for what the government's asking. And it also happens to be what Donald Tusk said he wanted back in March. I mean, Donald Tusk said, I propose that we aim for a trade agreement covering all sectors and with zero tariffs on goods. I mean, a lot of these stories, go back to the old Project Fear stuff during the referendum campaign, all assume we're going to have tariffs. The government's been completely clear. We want to have zero tariffs.
Yes, but hold on a second on that. What the government also wants to be able to say, and what a lot of Conservative MPs want to be able to say, is that no deal is still an option. And what Jaguar Land Rover are very clearly saying is that no deal would kill us, we'd have to leave the country.
Well, no, I'm not quite right, Just. I don't think so. I think what they're saying is no deal automatically means tariffs. It doesn't. Also...
Well, no, hang on, surely it does. It has to.
No.
Why not?
If we go to World Trade terms, we decide our tariffs, we can have zero tariffs.
But the European Union would have tariffs on our stuff when it went across to them.
Yep, if you look at studies of the car trade, it's robustly competitive and profitable at the moment, and that will continue because we've had a significant devaluation, which is a lot more than the tariffs anyway.
But they would have significant friction. Sorry to interrupt, but it's such a crucial point, isn't it? It's the friction. It's never mind the amount of the tariff, the amount of fuss getting stuff to and from. And in a no-deal Brexit, that would have to be there, wouldn't it?
No, that is illegal under WTO current terms. The latest WTO trade facilitation agreement insists that both sides must have seamless, i.e. effectively computerised, as now for the rest of the world, procedures which are effectively costless. But you just cut me off the key point. The reason why it is very much in Jaguar Land Rover's interest, and they're massively important. I'm speaking to you from Shropshire. They're incredibly important. They're plants in the West Midlands, on the Merseyside, the huge number of suppliers. Everyone's incredibly proud of what Tata have achieved, turning them around. This enormous investment. Only 10 days ago, they agreed to put another 20 billion in, which I don't think you covered on your programme. But what is really vital is that they will be better off if the government delivers on what the Prime Minister promised me in the Commons yesterday. If we really do leave the customs union, hang on, it's really important this, Jaguar Land Rover will have access to cheap parts and components all around the world, and the European suppliers currently will be forced to compete, or they will lose Jaguar Land Rover's business. And all the studies show the car trade is very robust at the moment, it is profitable, and that will continue.
We heard from Sir Mike Rake earlier in the programme, the anti-Brexit campaigner, it's fair to say, isn't it? Former BT chairman. He says business hasn't been listened to. Is it being listened to now?
Yes, of course it is. The massive public debate. You've got it on this morning. It's been going on all week. But I think what is really important is for business to get behind the Prime Minister. She has said all along she wants seamless free trade. We don't want any tariffs anywhere. And under those conditions, a newly independent UK outside the customs union, outside the single market and outside the ECJ, as she promised yesterday, will have access to the world. And our current European suppliers, who we value a lot, will have to compete on world terms. And that will bring prices down for every business and every single family.
And talking about...
Hang on, how really important is you always have on your programme, you're always having producers mainly interested in the 12% of GDP which goes to Europe. The 88% of the UK economy has nothing to do with exports to Europe. And the other point is that Europe is not growing as fast as the rest of the world. Look at Jaguar Land Rover. The fastest area of growth last year was China, 23% growth, 146,000 cars there. But very, very importantly, hang on, they built 80,000 cars in China last year. Jaguar Land Rover not standing still. If we don't make the UK world competitive...
But they're doing all that. They're doing all that within the EU, it's fair to say, isn't it?
Exactly. That's exactly the point I'm making. So Jaguar Land Rover not static. They've just opened a brand new plant in Slovakia, which is going to build 150,000 cars a year.
Let me put you... We're slightly running out of time. Look, we're slightly running... Can I put you on the subject of backing the Prime Minister? Do you back the Prime Minister on this third way, the facilitated customs arrangements, so we stay in regulatory alignment with the EU when it comes to goods and we collect the external tariff on our borders and hand it on? Can that work?
Well, this is yet another leak which we haven't seen. I go with what she told me in the Commons yesterday, that she wants to leave the customs union, leave the single market, leave the ECJ, and have the ability to do free trade deals around the world, and very, very importantly, buy components which will massively help Jaguar Land Rover as it grows its exports to China and other markets.
So, Mr. Patterson, you do not believe that it is feasible for the government to go to Europe and say we want to stay inside the single market for regulations on goods, that is not something that would be acceptable to you?
I don't think it's feasible for the government not to deliver the verdict of the referendum, which is endorsed by 85% of the votes of the Conservative and Labour parties in the general election, to leave the customs union, leave the single market and leave the ECJ, because that will put Jaguar Land Rover in a wonderful position to compete worldwide, because it'll be able to buy components cheaper around the world. It will drive down prices of its European suppliers.
Owen Paterson, thank you.